Hello, everyone. It is a Sagittarius new moon, so I'm going to read through a bit of what's going on. It's an interesting new moon to me because whilst it's in Sagittarius, I do feel there is some confusion out there. So, and I would say if I get my pointer, this, what we've got is, by the way, this is horoscopes.astro-seek.com. So go here. This is brilliant. You can put your details in if you have those. Your time of birth really is important in astrology. So this is a new moon chart. And in the UK, it happened at 22:57 p.m. And this is at GMT time. So if you're not in the UK, then you're going to be looking at 8 hours behind or ahead if you're in Australia, 8 hours if you're in California, 5 hours behind if you're in New York. So that would be, for instance, 5:57 p.m., nearly 6 p.m. in New York, as an example. So do check the times that happen for you. And then you can bring up your own chart by going to free horoscopes on this page. It's fantastic. I've got an account on this page and I use this, and I also use astro.com, which I'll show you my chart in a moment. So you'll understand where the new moon fell for me. And then you can look at your own aspects as well. And I'll show you how to do that. So this is a traditional chart starting at 0 degrees of Aries. And you can see here that we've got Jupiter, and currently Jupiter has literally just stationed to go direct. So the dates of Jupiter, which is quite important because Jupiter is to do with Sagittarius, and we'll look at the meaning of Sagittarius as well. So Jupiter retrograde began on July the 28th, 2022 at 8 degrees of Aries. And then it went back to November the 23rd, 2022, which is today, to 28:47. Now it's going to go direct. And when you look at Neptune, which is that conjunction, it can cause issues that, there's good stuff about Jupiter in Pisces, but Neptune is very beyond the veil. It's like what we don't see, the unknown. And we know that Jupiter takes 12 years around the chart, and Neptune, I think it's 184 from thought, or it might be 164. I'd have to double check. But we've got Neptune is going to go direct on December the 4th, 2022. And it's been a year of sort of like uncertainty and not clarity. There's been no real clarity going on because we had all of the lockdowns, and then certain things disappeared. And then there's like a lull of something. But I do feel that there's, looking at the monetary stuff that's gone on, I follow Catherine Austin Fitts, Fitts, and you can check her out on Solari. That's a web page, Solari, I believe, Solari Report. And there's also something called Financial Rebellion that she does, which is brilliant as well. So if you want to understand the monetary stuff and what's going on with that, then look at Financial Rebellion, because they cover other things as well. And they're short videos. They come out at once a week with Catherine Austin Fitts and a few other people, a few other women. So let's look. It's what a balsamic moon means, by the way, is it's a culmination of an entire cycle, and it dissolves back into from where it came. So when the moon is full, then it wanes and it dissolves back into where it came from, and then it comes out again. It's on that cycle. And it's when this happens, and it's an attunement to the divine. It's understanding oneself in the context of the divine and the corresponding expansion of consciousness, letting go of all that has come before that hinders this attunement, the beginnings of new imaginings for a new cycle. So it's not, and then we have the rebirth, that in the sense that the moon will then go into a new phase of becoming to its quarters and then becoming whole and full again. In the ninth house, and in fact, not in the ninth house, but Jupiter is ninth house territory. So if we look what we're looking at, it's growing from a spiritual perspective and realizing how the belief systems affect who you are as a person. And I've been actually thinking about that. Like, if we think about all of our belief systems, you see, you've got the sun and the moon up here in Sagittarius. Belief systems come from, in part, from things we see and things we hear and things we learn and then experience. And all of these things also come from culture, they come from other people, they come from books. And we can question all of that, you know, what is useful to us, because often we can have belief systems that have very little or no use to us, or we can believe things that are not true. And we can also believe things that hamper our self-expression and our creativity and us becoming the best version of ourselves, because our belief systems may, on a negative side, or from overexpansion Jupiter, we could be over the top and be egocentric and full of thinking that we're the greatest thing ever, you know, like a guru type person thinking, magical thinking. And when we see the Jupiter here conjunct Neptune, I'll tell you what that means as I move through this chart. So I'm just looking for Jupiter, because the specifics of planets and their conjunctions can be really, really powerful. So when a planet is conjunct another planet, and particularly that's gone retrograde and stationed, then we can have a lot of stuff taking place that's different, because it sort of brings a new light into something, like a new energy, a new planet. So that, you know, think about it, that would have been 12 years ago. So 12 years ago, Jupiter would have conjuncted Neptune as an example. And so that 12 years ago, if we look back 12 years, what happened in our lives? Maybe that would be a good thing to do. I might do that afterwards. I haven't looked at it myself. So Jupiter conjunct Neptune, although it's separating, this conjunction can cause very strong emotions, and it can be where we become very religious or idealistic. So it can also be great for knowledge, and it can be great for travel, and it's also good for art as well, because we've got that Neptunian thing going on. And in Pisces, the energy of Pisces is to do with being at one. So the wave in the ocean, as an example. And it can be where we feel like we're the energy, like a creation of something, but it's a bit of an unknown of that. But we can create something beautiful. We have to really use our intuition and be very clear that we're not just doing magical thinking, because I have seen myself in spirituality and spiritual circles that, yes, we have, to a degree, we have free will, but how much free will we have, you know, we're all born and we're all going to die, as an example. So we're not going to be here forever. So we've got to use our time effectively, because time, again, is Saturn. Saturn is currently, if you see, in Aquarius, and it's still square to Uranus here. And then we've got the North Node. I'm going to show you solar fire in a moment, but you can see that North Node is still conjunct the Uranian energy. So we're trying to break free of something based on that square to Saturn. Saturn's gone direct now, and that energy will be interesting to watch how this plays out with the North Node, because we have got, even though we don't really hear about it on the news, we have got stuff going on with things bottlenecking, like supplies of food and stuff like that. Farmers, I've seen complaining, Uranian energy in the sign of Taurus, and also new technologies around that as well, new energy. But in that crossover point of our resources of the earth, there could be a lot of people suffering from lack of resources or foods. And we're beginning to see that now with money as well. People are being laid off, and we have to not have our head too in the clouds with this, because as this moon and Mars retrograde as well, which is communication, there's something that we may not be seeing as we go inward. There may be, because this is about subjective communication and local communication. When I go over to solar fire, I'm going to show you the squares that are coming up and some of the things. So whilst a lot of people say, oh, this is brilliant, Sagittarius really happy and Jupiter's really happy and wonderful, there's other stuff going on below the surface, which I'll show you. So Sagittarius keywords are adaptability, it's intuition, it's where honesty, it's beliefs, it's long journeys, a pilgrimage, multicultural, it's to do with ideals and ideas, it's the nomad, it's homelessness where you don't feel, like you have a home on earth. It doesn't have to mean that you don't have a home, but you may not feel at home in the world. It's to do with truth, faith, and trust. It's where we explore. It can be inspiration, where we feel restless. It can be zealous faith. It can be also sales. It can be freedom. It's half truths as well. We can be fooled sometimes. It's the silver-tongued devil, the charmer, the guru, teacher. It's natural law. It's the shaman. It can be alienation, dogmatic, philosophical. It's wisdom, meaning, and expansion. So Jupiter and Sagittarius go together in that respect. And then what you'll see, I'm going to show you my chart. And before I pop over, look, Sun is at 1 degree of Sagittarius and the Moon is 1 degree of Sagittarius. And Mercury is in Sagittarius. And Venus is also in Sagittarius. And Mars is in Gemini retrograde. Jupiter is in Pisces station. Saturn is in Aquarius. And Uranus is in retrograde until January. Neptune is in retrograde till the 4th of December. And then Pluto is moving on in to Capricorn energy. Saturn is moving on into Aquarius. I think it's got 2 more retrogrades before it will go in 2023, and then it will retrograde back into the sign of Capricorn. So it's fascinating times because the financial crisis began in 2008 when Saturn moved into the sign of, not Saturn, Pluto moved into the sign of Capricorn, and it's been there. So if we go 2022 minus 2008, 2007, it's 14 years, 15 years, yeah? So it's been there a long time. And when it goes into Aquarius, the last time it would have been in Aquarius would have been 246 years ago. I hope I've got that absolutely right, 245 years ago. And also when the formation of the USA was when Pluto was at 27 degrees of Capricorn, and that was in 1776, the formation of the USA. So we can see the breakdown of patriarchal structures and rules and laws going on through the astrology. I'm not saying that. I'm just telling you that's what the astrology is telling us. The moon is trine Neptune at this time as well, but it's separating. The moon is also sextile to Pluto, but separating. So the moon, you see here, it's trine, not trine. The moon is sextile to Pluto and it's trine to almost, but it's coming out of that trine. It's also, Mercury is conjunct Venus. Mercury is also, there's a few octiles going on here, which is half a square. Mercury octile, Pluto, we call it an octile. So if you take the moon and you see here, it's 45 degrees. A square is 90 degrees. So if we take here, 1, 2, 3, that would be a square, okay? And then this becomes a trine. So the moon is actually trine to Jupiter, which is a good one. The moon trine Jupiter is quite lovely for us. And I'm thinking what else there to show you. We got the North Node, that's right, in Taurus. We've got Lilith. Lilith is the energy of the Garden of Eden, where she threw off Adam and the belief systems and patriarchal, and she was demolished so much for that, but she rose in her own way. She resurrected herself. Chiron is in the sign of Aries at 12, and then if you see here, is that got Pluto looks like I'm going to see what it's doing with Mars there. So Pluto looks like it's an inconjunct, but I could be wrong. But we'll look over on solar fire with that. Right, so with my chart, I don't know where this is happening for you, but if you look at my chart, the sun and the moon are literally on my ascendant. My ascendant is 27 degrees. And this is probably a good thing for me, but it is doing an opposition to my sun, which is 0 degrees of Gemini. You see here, I've got an opposition to the sun, and the moon is opposition to my sun as well. And then it will be making other aspects. So one would look, if you want to look like we'd say a square, that's 1, 2, 3. So we go here, and it's 1, 2, 3. It's just about here. It's almost squaring my Lilith here. And then if we looked at the top here and we go to here, it's not touching, that would be a square. A sextile would be, we take 2, 60, and a semi-sextile, I always have to think about this, but a semi-sextile is 30 and a sextile is 60. And then we've got squares, which are like this, and then we've got trines. So it's really good to look at what's going on. So this is a month, this new moon is definitely about me and about myself, which is I'm quite happy with. It's really important for me, to be honest with you, because I've made some big changes in my life in the way I'm thinking about things and myself and how I put myself out in the world. I'm having some work done on myself. I've had some work done on my restructuring of a couple of teeth of mine. So it's about myself and about my self-image, and also how in part the work I'm doing, but this also then links into others. And then with that Mars, you can see that it's up here and it's retrograde. So it's heading towards my moon at the moment, which is a tricky one. That could make me argumentative a little bit, but I don't mind that. With my Scorpio, sometimes we have to be able to stand up for ourselves. So sometimes when planets hit certain things, it's beneficial to us. If I look at my own chart and you do look at your own chart, because it'll give you some guidance, because the new moon covers the 28 days ahead and a full moon covers us 2 weeks ahead. And then remember, we had those eclipses. That eclipse for me was on my lunar, I had the lunar on my, I think, solar and lunar, and they happened in my 6th and 12th houses. In fact, actually, it was 11 for me. That was quite good. I remember now, it was 2 degrees, that eclipse up there. So that was a good one for me, that it just fell into my 11th house. But I bring in some of the 12th to that for myself as well. So where the things fall, and remember that eclipses go 6 months ahead, and they're playing out in a storyline, because they have something called, like, I'll show you actually, and I'll show you here. Let me show you. If we look at eclipses, so moon calendar, I love this site. It's really brilliant. So that if you look at eclipses here, and then you've got Saros cycles. So if we look at the one, this is quite important to know. So it's a bit of a lesson if you're looking at an eclipse. So if we take the eclipse of October the 25th, which was in Scorpio, that fell in my 11th house, and we click on Saros, it's 1, 2, 4, then we can see that if we go back, let's see, 20, I'm going to have to scroll for it, 2022, you can see that what I would then be doing would be looking back to where it fell in 2024, because it's going to be 2004. And then there's cycles. So I was born in 1966. So that 1, 2, 4 cycle would have been one in 1968. It would have been in my 11th house, I think, there. And then in 1986, I would have been 20 years old at that time. And it was in Libra. So again, that would have been in either my 10th or 11th. And then in 2004, that would have fallen if we go back to, if that's, this is good for if you watch what I'm doing because you can learn something here. It's brilliant to see. So October the 14th, 2020, 2004, I mean 2020s, 2004, it was 21 degrees of Libra and it was a solar eclipse. So if I go back to this, so that was in my 11th house, and that's our hopes and dreams, you know. So and then we go back to this, we can begin to see, if I look at October the 3rd, 1986, and we look at Libra, and it was at 10 degrees, and I go back to my chart, and we look at 10 degrees, it would have been 510. It would have been in my 10th house when I was 20 years old, as an example. So, and I started a business actually at age 21, and that business lasted for me for 30 years. And it was in the service industry, and I employed quite a lot of people over the years. And I have evolved into doing what I'm doing now. And I moved on from that for various reasons. Some people, I won't go into the whole story now, but there was a lot of changes for me and a lot of trauma that I had to deal with and memories that came up at my Chiron return. So Chiron return is really defining. It's really, that's another thing. If you wanted to look at your Chiron with me, I'm at age 49 to 51. We have what is called the Chiron return. So do look at that. Now, what I'm going to do is do a new share and go over to the emanated page of the 23rd of November, 2022, or in the USA, November 23rd, 2022. And this is the time of the new moon. So remember, this is GMT. So you want to either add or take away, depending on where you are, the hours. So 5 hours behind USA, and then 8 hours behind in California, and then ahead. And if you're in Central, you know, then it's 6 hours behind the UK. And in Australia, you're ahead. So that's it. So you see up here. So if we move this chart now, and we're going to go by days, and I'll speed it up. So you can see you've got a station here. This is Jupiter. So Jupiter in the sign of the 12th house, in Jupiter in the 12th house, is you seek, but we're looking at Pisces, yeah. So in Pisces, what we're really looking at is an energy where we are intuitive and we're searching for the truth, and we are champions for the underdogs. We're all underdogs to some degree. Whatever way we want to look at it, we all are to a point. So we want to champion each other, and it is where we've got religious connotations about it, or spiritual, religious or spiritual. And we're quite lost, I think, as human beings. We've got quite lost in, a lot of us have been thrown off course during this whole period of COVID and lockdowns. It's been really difficult for people to understand, you know, because meaning is really important in life, you know, to have meaning. And there is a word, I was watching a guy I know called Sam Vaknin on YouTube. He talks about personality disorders. He's a professor. So all of types of personality disorders, from narcissistic responses and bipolar and all of these different things. So that's Sam, S-A-M, Vaknin, V-A-K-I-N. You'll learn a lot from him. And it's really important because it is to do with the mind. So I was watching a video of his yesterday, and he came up with the word anomie, and he explained what it meant. It was from a Jewish guy in the early 1900s. I haven't got the dates correct, but just, you know, that's an idea. And I looked up what the word meant, and he was explaining what it meant. It's basically is a social condition defined by an uprooting or breakdown of any moral values, standards, or guidance for individuals to follow. It is Anomie is believed to possibly evolve from conflict of belief systems and causes breakdowns of social bonds. So we have had a breakdown. So, and it's not to do with the individual, that word he explained. It's this where society loses the story. So this has happened in history, in, you know, like in Auschwitz, sorry, for as an example, how he looked at, he was explaining that how people can lose meaning, but he was also explaining how some people, even though they had everything removed from them, they still found meaning. So if everything's taken away from us, like, food, our, sexual relationships, friendships, family, if everything's gone, it's like, where do we find meaning? So it's really important, I think, that we do understand that the meaning, we give meaning to things. And if we're too materialistic, and I think we're being taught this at this time, that we don't know where the financial stuff's going to go, because it's clear to me that money is printed. Yeah, that's the way it works. Money is printed, and then it goes into society and it's used. There are countries that have completely been wiped out with their financial resources in the past, where prices have gone really high, where people can't afford to buy things, where things just get way out of control. We've seen this with crypto over the last month, a lot of fraud that's gone on there. So where people have invested. So a lot of people have lost, and that can be very traumatic for people. We've had the trauma of death with the COVID, and then there's a guy called Dr. John Campbell on YouTube, who's talking about death rates being quite high at the moment. And he's been quite interesting for me to watch as well. John Campbell, YouTube, doctor explaining about such things, of what's going on, looking at statistics. So I don't know much about the reality of that, but he is showing statistics on YouTube. When we look at up here, let's look at the Mars retrograde. That's going to be retrograde now until, I'm going to tell you the date. It's going to be retrograde until Mars is going to be retrograde until January the 12th, 2023. But it's going to be in Gemini until it went retrograde on October the 30th, 2022 at 25 degrees of here, 25 degrees of Gemini, and it's going to retrograde back to Mars to 8 degrees of Gemini till January the 12th, and then it will go direct again. So that's a long time. It's going to be there until, I think, March, and then it will move into the sign of Cancer. So Mars in Gemini is where we like to initiate ideas and spread information, but we do know, look at all of the misinformation, disinformation, and we're all being told, who knows what's true? We're being told things, and then there's restrictions and people being taken off social media. There's very interesting about Twitter, what's happened there. I'm not a follower of Elon Musk, but I am watching him. I don't know what his overall plans are. It looks, on the surface, it can look positive, but we really have to not buy into the guru type, savior type complex that we do it with. We love bomb people. We think they're fantastic, and then we find out that not to be the case. So we don't want to get too overexcited. We want to hold a bit back and just watch what goes on. So Mars in Gemini, we like to initiate ideas and spread information, and we like to be assertive, although we can resort to evasive behavior. So we're going to be probably seeing a lot of that play out in the coming months. If we looked at Mars in the third house, we'd be looking at the ability to state our thoughts and ideas strongly. But remember, it's retrograde, yeah? So maybe that inward energy where we're learning to state our own ideas strongly inwardly, and so we can make an impact on our immediate surroundings. And we could have clashes with, we could have inner with our inner world at this time, because it is retrograde, because it is where we go inside and reflect what we're up to. And that's part of the shadow work, that, it really is looking at ourselves, because we all have a side to us that is shadow. But there's the positive side of the shadow, meaning that maybe we've been restricted in some way by things we've been told to believe about ourselves as children. Like if you tell a child constantly, you say to a child, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Or you, on the other hand, you adulate the child to make it into a little king or a prince or a princess, or then it can be it can be very unhealthy, that type of stuff that goes on. So either way, either side of the coin, the overadulation or the abuse. And then we have belief systems, which then will hamper us. And that can, part of our shadow can be that we need to shake off that shadow side of ourselves that is demeaning to ourselves. So the shadow is not just about our own shadow of darkness, because we're all capable of that. And we don't know what we're capable of, but we have thoughts. And it's very interesting when we consider what we think. It's better not to, if we think something unusual and it's not, we don't, we don't think it's part of us, it's like to accept our thoughts, because if we push them away and we have untoward thoughts and we push them away, having an untoward thought is not an action. There's a difference between actions and thoughts. So if we have an untoward thought, it means that we can then inspect that thought and say, oh, where does that come from? And our judgments and our belief systems, like the Jupiter thing, where you've got to believe what the guru believes in order to be part of the guruship. I like that word. I don't know if that's a real word, but I like the idea that I don't like the idea of guru. That's not my something that I go along with, and the following of others. We all do follow to a point as we move through life. However, there comes a point when we have to look inward and see, are we believing things that are true? Because there's very few truths in this world, but there are things that humans do that affect others that can then become, a sense of truth. Like it's true that somebody is doing something that's untoward to another human being. It's true that money is printed. Like that at the moment, they're going to do a 12-week. Governments are doing a 12-week plan to, I believe it's 12 weeks, so don't take my word, where they're going to trial out CBDC coins. And I don't know where that's going to lead, because the way I see it is that we have electricity that we use and resources. And I know it's a bit far-fetched, but maybe not, that if something like meteorite hits part of the world and it takes out huge amounts of electricity, as an example, if we're dealing only with electronic money and there is no cash, as an example, if there's no cash, because we've all got so used to not using cash, then what would happen would be that we would then have no way of, our purchasing power would be taken away from us. So I'm of the belief system that cash is valuable to a degree, that if you have, I'm in the UK, £10 in your pocket as an example, you can go and exchange that for some food. If you have a card or a digital coin and the electricity's cut, you can't go and exchange, you can't buy what you want to buy. So I don't know if human beings are really, that are in charge, supposedly in charge, have really well thought out plans. It's easier if you're wealthy, like extremely wealthy, where you don't have to, to the point where you would never have to get out of bed again if you didn't want to and go to work. There are a few people who have that type of money on the planet. There's nothing wrong with money, by the way. I'm not complaining about money. But I'm saying there are people that would not have to. But saying that, if they had all of their money in CBDC and they didn't have any solid money, like a bit of gold or a bit of silver or a bit of whatever, and these things could be wiped out. They could be computers crashing or other stuff. So we'll see. But if you can use cash, Catherine Austin Fitts says, make an effort and use cash. And people think that they don't have any power over changes like taking place. But if people make an effort, one becomes two becomes three. The more we need to make an effort. So where we can, it's not about hiding money. The cash can be, it's accounted for in society. So it's not about hidden stuff. It's about going to a cash point and taking out £100 and using that to do your shopping as an example. Keep it simple. I know we can't do it online, but I will say with all of this thing here, we've got new technology coming up and we've got something coming up. But there can be some disasters around this area, in my opinion, as we can see with what just happened with crypto. So a lot about money today. But with Jupiter here, which is quite beautiful, let's go ahead days. So there you go. So on the 25th, it's then into direct. And then if we take Neptune up here, because that's the 25th of November, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 1, 2, 3, 4. They station 4, 5, Neptune, and then Neptune's direct. But being that Jupiter is 12 years around the chart, then we do know that Neptune would be, it's going to be there for quite some time. I think it's up until 2027, I believe, from what I recall. And we got Chiron retrograde, and that will go direct. That's the next one, I believe, and then it will be Uranus. So let's have a look. So we're looking at Chiron, which is the wounded healer. There you go, station, direct. So watch there. Station's 22nd, 23rd, and then it goes direct. So again, that energy is moving forward. We've looked at our wounds. It's like it's time to, Chiron in Aries is really interesting. Chiron in the first house as well, we might as well say, because it is in Aries. So taking that into account, it's where we're wounded either emotionally or physically. So if you have this in your birth chart in the first house, you'll understand that. I've got mine in the fourth. Every time you express your essential being, you experience rejection. And this may lead to self-exploration, and you later become a wounded healer or teacher. So it's where the wound becomes our gift, so to speak. But it's heavy. Chiron is heavy. Chiron in Aries for all of us is where our sense of self has been violated in some way. Now, I think we can all agree with that. But the ultimate violation would be that it's a momentum, it's like a build-up of violation. What humans do to each other, and then how we violate ourselves with our thoughts, we can, and the way we think about ourselves as well, and how we judge ourselves, and our inner critic can violate us. So in that violation, we may fear asserting ourselves. So if we have a really foul inner critic that's been implanted into us through introjects that we've taken on through the world and through people that brought us into the world, and through, I had it recently with somebody, very harsh words to me unnecessarily. And in that, you can see somebody else's wound, because often what comes out of our mouths would generally be where we are destabilized in ourselves when we say something to another. There's some destabilization going on within us that then gets projected out into the world. And wars are caused by things that are said as well, and belief systems too. Not always, but generally. And it's where we may also overcompensate by attempting to be the first at everything. Like, I want to be first. And that's very egocentric and unnecessary, because we're each unique individuals, and that's something we need to explore in ourselves. And it's where we may also, through understanding this wounding, the Aries wound, that we become pioneers. And we can all be a pioneer. It doesn't have to be, it can be simple. It can be in such simple ways that we can pioneer something. We can pioneer like kindness, as an example. So I'm just looking what else is going on here. So that Mars, if we take months, let me show you months, because that's January, February, March. So on the 24th of March, it will be 29 degrees. And then days, then it will be on the 25th, 24th, 25th, it's going to go into the sign of Cancer, which is a whole different ball game for Mars in the sign of Cancer. It's a whole different energy. So, and if we go back to today, I just want to show you what's upcoming very soon. So we've got the 24th, and I know 24th of November, 2022, you say in the USA, you say November the 24th, 2022. So we've just gone into, it's the 23rd. I'm going to go back here. So what we have is, if you look and we go days ahead and you look at the Mars, if you look at Mars down here, so Mars at the moment is at 23 degrees, and then that will begin to do some squares to other planets. So if we go ahead, because it's going retrograde rather, so as it goes back, it's square. It's at the moment it looks like that's a trine, but it's not going to square Saturn. But if we keep going back, we'll be able to see that's going backwards. There you go. So that's the 5th, that's the 9th of December, so 15 degrees. And then we can see squares would look like this. So a square, when it opposes the sun, so Mars opposing the sun, could be quite tricky as well. 15, so if I go back, 14, I'm just looking at when Mars will oppose 17. So you can see here, this is the first week in December that's coming up. So there's other stuff going on, and we have to be aware that, to a point we do create our reality, but we are dependent on things that are going on outside there. So we don't want to get too carried away into magical thinking. We're coming out of the fog, and as this, it has been very sort of foggy, sort of nothingness, like an almost nothingness going on for a few months, if you get my drift. I don't know how you've been feeling. So yes, it is beautiful, the Jupiter in Pisces, and that will be leaving there. That's the last thing I'm going to say. We're going to look at the days. There you go. So on the 20th of December, Jupiter is moving back into the sign of Aries, which it's already been in. It got to 8 degrees and then it went retrograde. So Jupiter is where in Aries is where we are freedom loving and spontaneous, and where we seek truth. And it's where we have potential, for something, but it will be dependent on what Jupiter's doing with other planets at that time. And it's really where we maybe hopefully could inspire each other as well, because we do need to work together to get some things done. If you look here, that is moving off at that point, 20th of December. We've got Saturn will be moving, it's moving off, which is really good. That restriction and whatever that's been going on for a lot of us, we've been very restricted. But the North Node conjunct Uranus is I actually quite like it. For me, that's happening in my 6th house. It's good to look where that's happening for you. That Uranus is heading to my Mercury, and then it's heading to my Mars, and then it's my own North Node, and then the Sun. So it's good to look at the node and to see where that's happening for you, because the node conjunct Uranus is where it gives us the ability to search for new and original ways to deal with our life challenges, which we desperately need, yeah, because there are going to be challenges. And it's where our individuality is in harmony, with our focal point. But the downside can be where we don't want to follow the rules. And it may be that we need a bit of both, at this time. But there can be a big gap between independence and freedom, because the thing is, if people start losing jobs and stuff like that, and people are spending less money, the danger is we go into something called deflation, which is worse than inflation. Deflation is where even people who have money, I'm not talking like multi-millionaires, but people who have money, spare money, they decide to hold on to it and they don't spend it. And when people don't spend money, and even the people that have got money don't spend money, because there'll be people who won't have money, and then people, what it will mean is that companies that employ people won't be selling things, and that will affect their output, which will affect them having to lay off people. And that's the problem with deflation. So inflation is why people are probably still spending money, because people who've got money are earning a small amount of interest on their savings, and they will still spend some money. So it's just going to be really interesting to watch how this whole financial, because we rely on money to exist in the world. Maybe there can be some bartering going on where people haven't got resources. There's that possibility as well. But it's interesting with the whole 2030 idea agenda and what that means to humanity, because there's so much debt in the world, trillions and trillions and trillions of debt all over the world, that how one is ever going to sort out this issue that we have with money. We can't just keep printing money. So maybe we should all be given our own printing money machine. And then, so I'm not liking this CBDC stuff personally. I'm not into that idea totally at all, because I don't know how practical it's going to play out. But we shall all certainly find out. Anyway, I'll catch you later. Thanks for watching.